Thank you, Darlene. That was beautiful. And we have Shelley to thank for that number. Claire de Lune was one of her favorite pieces of music. Good afternoon. My name is Patty Bourne, and it is my honor, on behalf of Shelley's family and the Presbyterian Church, to welcome you here today. This is a celebration of life. This is a time to remember, a time to give thanks for Rochelle Ann, our Shelley. Please pray with me. O God, in the Psalms you tell us that you are our refuge and our strength, a very present help in trouble, and so we are not to fear. Jesus told us this promise, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not let them be afraid. Lord, you have given us so much. And we start off this service giving thanks for life itself, and especially for the life of Shelley. She lived a full life, and we are here to celebrate that, to give thanks, and to also be reminded how we are to live our days, all in thanks to you. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. I'd like to invite Sarah Shaw, which is Shelley's niece, and Chris Reeland, who is Shelley's son-in-law, to share scripture with us.
Hello, I'll be reading from Psalm 121. I lift my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore.
You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand and give it light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven.
Would you please stand, and we will sing, Open My Eyes That I May See. I guess we need hymnals. There are hymnals under the chairs. 451. Open my eyes that I may. I'd like to invite David and Julie Krause. David is Shelley's brother, and Julie is her sister-in-law. Where are you in the family? Number one.
Thank you. I'd like to say a few words about my memories of Shelley and our family growing up. It's appropriate that we are gathered here in this church for Shelley's memorial. Shelley was active in the church from a young age, and as a young adult, she joined the church. Over the years, she served as the church as deacon, church secretary, administrative assistant, and she also spent many hours volunteering for the church. Our mother, Anne, was a lifelong member of this church, and she was a deacon for many years. Our parents, Charles and Anne, were married in this church in 1948. And going way back, our great-grandparents on my mother's side, this was Curtis and Emma Ballard. They were charter members of this church in the late 1800s. So I'm glad this place, with so much family history, was chosen for remembering Shelley. Shelley was born Rochelle Ann Krause on July 1st, 1952. She was named after her uncle, my mother's brother, Uncle Richard, and he died as a young man, just before Shelley was born. Shelley was number 3 out of 5 kids, and it was myself first, then Tom, and then Shelley, and then came Mick and Janet. Shelley had an adventurous spirit and loved to explore. We grew up on Mary Lane in Antelope, and that place was full of adventures. We were out in the country, and there were wide open spaces. I remember us kids getting ready for an adventure. We were going to go explore to the end of the street and maybe beyond. So we got out our old red Radio Flower wagon, we loaded it up, Tom and I got in, and Shelley was the horse. She pulled the wagon. As kids, we had to do chores around the house. We had, of course, help to do the dishes, take out the trash, mow the lawn, make our beds. And I talked Shelley into making my bed for 5 cents a week. And, hey, I got out of some of my chores. Dinner time at the Krause house could be challenging with 5 hungry kids. And if you're at the end of the line when the food was passed around, you might not get much. And Shelley sometimes was at the end of the line. Maybe these were some of the formative experiences that contributed to her being sensitive to women's issues and an advocate for women in her adulthood. Growing up in Red Bluff, more adventures awaited us in wintertime. Living close to the Sacramento River, there are sloughs that run through the area, and it seemed like every winter those sloughs flooded when the river overflowed. And after the floodwaters receded, there were huge lakes that were left down there in those sloughs, and it was a great place to look for adventure. I remember getting down there, we'd find logs and use lumber and build rafts, and hop on those rafts and go exploring. Shelley was always willing to volunteer to be one of the working sailors on our raft. We couldn't wait for school to get out and summer vacation to begin. We would load up the car, pack up the boat, and head to Clear Lake, what seemed like for months of camping out. We looked forward to boating, skiing, fishing, playing cards, and meeting new friends. When we got back home, Mom, Gran, and Shelley would make pickles and do canning throughout the summer in the very hot kitchen. Shelley continued that cooking tradition into adulthood, and she made great chutney. And I always got a little bit, but now I can't find that stuff. They don't make very good chutney in the store, or that we can get in the stores, unfortunately. We all went to Antelope Elementary School, kindergarten through 8th grade. Tom, Shelley, and I played in the band and march in parades. While in 8th grade, Shelley broke her leg skiing on the slopes, and she was the only one at her graduation in her fancy dress and a leg cast up to her hip. Poor kid. After elementary school, us country kids had to take the bus into town to Red Bluff High School. There, Shelley was active in sports. She was a member of GAA, the Girls Athletic Association, and also Tri-High Y, which is associated with the YMCA. After high school, Shelley attended Chico State. Tom and I were both there at the same time, and we kept in touch. After a couple of years in college, she got a job in Paradise and then in Chico. When Mom moved to Belmont to complete her master's in Montessori education, Shelley went with her, and this is where she met her first husband, Roland. The couple first lived in San Francisco, where Shelley was employed as a highly valued project secretary for the engineering firm Earl and Wright. Later, she and Roland made their home in Concord, and this is where their daughters, Colette and Roxanne, were born. Shelley continued her church volunteer work, teaching Sunday school, visiting shut-ins, organizing church programs and activities. Shelley and Roland later divorced, but they remained friends and parented their girls throughout her life. Afterwards, she moved back to Red Bluff, where she worked as church secretary and volunteered at the Domestic Violence Hotline for Women. She met and married Dave Lafferty for a short time. Single again, she moved to Elk Grove, where the girls graduated from high school. There, she worked as the administrative assistant for the Presbyterian of Northern California. Family again drew Shelley back to Red Bluff for a while, until she finally settled in Weed and was a caregiver for the elderly. That was a good role for her, since she was always sociable and had a good heart. Shelley enjoyed being surrounded by nature, and she loved living at the base of Mount Shasta to look up at that mountain every day. She loved to travel and would jump in her RV and go off on adventures. She was stories. Horseback riding was another adventure for her. She bought a horse and took up riding. Horseback riding was another adventure for her. She bought a horse and took up riding. When the summers got too hot, she would take her horse to Crescent City, ride on the beaches, and spend weeks camping out. In winter, she enjoyed knitting by the fire, skiing Mount Shasta, wildflowers, mountain lakes, hiking, even mountain biking were her favorite activities. One last remembrance I have. Last spring, we visited Shelley in Weed. She wanted to take us to her special place, Castle Lake. We hiked the trails and saw beautiful wildflowers. I can still picture Shelley hiking those trails and enjoying nature as she had during her lifetime. Julie has some words to say.
It might be a gray and rainy day outside and cold, but this space in here is full of warm hearts remembering Shelley. Shelley could be described as a woman with vigorous vitality. She was a lively spark, sometimes loud, sometimes noisy, and fierce with her opinions while holding her ground. Sometimes that put others off, and they were wary or cautious of her. Perhaps, though, she became that way because she was the middle child sandwiched between three boisterous brothers, made to be the horse that pulled the wagon, indentured for 5 cents a week to make beds, and recipient of meager portions at the end of the line at the Krause dining table. She didn't get a feminine ally not until Janet was born, but that was half a decade later, and by then she had learned survival skills. So as such, Shelley was always kind of marching forth, So is it any wonder that she designated today, this date, March the 4th, to remember her? David spoke about her living, her life story. I want to speak about her dying because it was informed by just how she lived. Death is always a surprise for most humans, and it comes as a shock. We know cognitively in our heads that life will have an ending, but we don't really feel its imminence. It can come along suddenly or be a long, drawn-out process. Yet, most of us are not really prepared to meet that moment. In Shelley's case, she had a few months to really look it in the eye, so to speak. She had inklings that something was amiss with her body last spring and summer and began the medical journey toward diagnosis. In September, after a pulmonoscopy, she was told they had found a cancerous node in her lungs. By November, the doctors were pretty sure it was metastasized pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Jumped on the train of aggressive interventions, trying to buy more time or to stave off the inevitable. But being Shelley, she marched forth in her swimsuit with daughter Colette to sit on a beach at Waikiki and savor the sunrise and the sunsets and to ponder her response to such a daunting diagnosis. She, like her brother David, was always very pragmatic. And about this diagnosis, her words were, "You live, you die, simple as that." Facing death, she was both brave and courageous, deciding to forego treatment, and in doing so, her daughters took their lead from their mother, both of them being both brave and courageous. Upon her return from Hawaii, without a lot of emotional fanfare, she immediately took charge of getting her affairs in order, disseminating her possessions, taking care of legalities, planning the where she was going to die, a rented Airbnb, which we all called the last resort. And in the midst of that, she began saying her goodbyes, which included forgiving family slights, revisiting warm memories, and giving specific instructions to many of us. Being Shelley, she took charge of every decision regarding her care, to even the last one, the moment when she said, "Yes, I'm ready now to be sedated for a final peaceful passage." I would say in the last months of her life, she was at her very best, her most magnificent. She was full of gratitude and fully conscious to this gift of life, savoring it, asking for cherry pie, even though by this time she really ate very little. But in the middle of the night, she crept out to the kitchen to take one sweet spoonful right out of the middle of this whole pie. Then she left her spoon lying suspiciously next to it. The next morning, when we asked what happened to the pie, she laughed and she said she didn't know who had done that. Indeed, Shelley made her dying a tender human memory, and not what so often happens did it become a pure medical event. Part of her dying process was to invite her girls to lean in with her to this experience, and that they did. David and I were requested to accompany them and assist on the journey that last week. It was during that tumultuous week in January when the whole state of California had such torrential storms with wild winds and rain, trees falling and flooding in so many places. But there was one short, quiet interval during that week when the weather calmed. Shelley took her walker and she stepped out on the porch at the last resort. to view a magnificent neon sunset. And with the sky, it was painted in vivid hues. I remember her smile. Her smile mirrored the beauty she saw, and we captured that in a few photos that day. It was another extraordinary moment that life had granted. By leaning in with Shelley, Colette and Roxanne stepped up to become the support which seemed to make her stronger and even more of a life force. Not only were they her health advocates, managers of hospice services, schedulers of visitors and help, but they were quick studies in learning how to set up and monitor medical equipment, whether it was the hospital bed or the oxygen tank. They had to become creative engineers, figuring out just how to Velcro that all-important catheter tube attachment so they didn't get crimped when Shelley walked around. They improvised a constantly changing spreadsheet of a variety of complicated medications for us all to follow. But most essentially, they were there, fully present, as tender, loving caregivers. What they brought to the extraordinary circumstances at hand, their mother's dying, was a sense of calm command, and they embraced it with soft compassion. Her daughters are the legacy of Shelley's life, and at its end, together, these three women epitomized the meaning of love. If at the end of our lives, we all have the good fortune to be surrounded with such loving care, that indeed is what could be defined as grace made visible. In the last days, Shelley and I had a conversation that was, for me, transformative. It was as if she had distilled down the very essence of what was important and essential. For the first time in my almost 6 decades of knowing her, I really saw her in a new light. It was a moment of clarity, one I will remember, sharply focused as if in a camera's lens. For a time now, I've been taking classes from a woman named Sherry Loveler, who is both an artist and a writer. She wrote a book, and from it is a poem I'd like to share, which captures what I'm really trying to convey here. I invite you to close your eyes and let her words just seep in. It's entitled, Saying Goodbye. It took our whole lives to see each other, to see beyond the stuff that families and sisters hold. For a second, I saw you. I saw you as you always wanted to be seen. And in that moment, love flowed between us like never before. It was more than knowing it was goodbye. It was, in fact, hello. And though it seemed late in our lives, it was perfect because I saw you. I saw you with my soul. And though words cannot express that feeling, I know you took it with you as much as I know anything. Thank you.
Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a picture because Mom loves pictures, and we discovered that with all of the albums that we had to go through. So everybody say, Jizo. Wonderful. So I think everybody knows that I'm Colette. I'm Shelley's older daughter. And I want to thank you all for being here to share so many good memories about my mom. While there are lots of specific memories and events that I will keep close to my heart, there are some very important overarching themes about Shelley I want to share. Some of these are from her time here as church secretary, which is how I know quite a few of you on that side of the room. Her joyful attitude toward life and her ability to cultivate community were two big themes that I saw at our time in Red Bluff. It seemed like she was a friend to everyone here, following the golden rule, and because of that, I felt like everyone at the church was part of one big extended family. Plus, we spent a lot of time here. It was like my second home. My mom's close relationship with the church and all its members gave me a huge family, even larger than my actual huge family. Because it's like 40 of us here, I think, or more. Mom cultivated friendships and networks of good people to surround her in her life. Such a positive lesson. Every time she moved, we made new friends and created a whole new community, and it was all around her. That was also true in Elk Grove and Weed. More recently, her joyful attitude and caring nature cultivated a network of animal-loving people and their pets that allowed her to spend lots of time with horses, dogs, cats, chickens, ducks, and probably a few more in there. Especially her horse, Nacho, taking him to different places in California, like they mentioned in Crescent City. She loved riding her horse on the beach. Mom seemed to make it a point to nurture her joyful spark by actively including lots of things in her daily life that made her happy. Playing the piano, taking vacations abroad, going to the coast, knitting, snow skiing, and water skiing earlier in life, horseback riding, and watching live music and theater. Another everyday activity that sparked joy for her is another overarching theme. When Mom was still working here and working in Sacramento, I remember her always being very well dressed, doing her hair every morning with more hairspray and mousse than I care to mention, and doing her makeup often while driving and never crashing. I remember a large palette of eyeshadows always living in the center console of the minivan. And past photos of my mom show this as well. She probably inherited this from her mother because Grandma Ann was also very well dressed and coiffed in so many of the photos that Roxy and I have seen in the endless number of albums that we have, including quite a few of the Presbyterian Church's spring fashion show luncheons. And I remember the food being prepared over there. I can almost taste the chicken salad. Mom's high personal standards and professionalism are something I will always remember, and I think they brought her a lot of joy and pride. She also sold Mary Kay for decades and took so much pride in keeping her skin looking fabulous and helping the ladies around her look fabulous too. Even during her last week in this life, Mom insisted we go get our nails done. So Roxy and I got to have one last trip to the salon with her. She wasn't about to leave this earth without perfectly manicured nails. Mom's professionalism and grace is something I take to heart every day. Her high standards were with me even during the most challenging parts at the end of her life. Regardless of what needed to happen each day, I still took time to do my skincare routine, put on a fresh outfit, even if that was just sweatpants, and put on my earrings, which she has many of. Oh my God, she had so many earrings. Speaking of professionalism and grace, having grace under fire was something my mother did expertly. That's the final thing I want to touch on. Sorry, hold on. I feel like Shelley was incredibly strong, even when things were going badly or completely wrong. She would take it in stride, maybe give it one good sentence of cursing, and then immediately start planning a path forward, because there seemed to be no reason to wallow. It was either, how do we find the small positives in this situation, or let's drive forward with tenacity and get to the next positive. Mom seemed to know there would always be a next positive. That ties back into her faith. She believed there was a greater path, even when she didn't, attend church regularly at the end. She still believed. She and my grandmother had little frog figurines all over the house when my mom was living with her towards the end of Anne's life, because they were a reminder of the acronym FROG, fully reliant on God. God has a plan, and you just have to keep moving forward towards it. Mom believed that a planned path had positivity and joy even during the hard parts. You just have to look for it and focus on it. And I'll just close with a few specific things that I will miss about my mother. How she felt that professionalism and details mattered, her beautiful handwriting and her grammar and punctuation, her ability to do shorthand and her penchant for formal correspondence, her obsession with lapel pins, earrings, and her hair mousse and chapstick, which we found so many tubes of chapstick going through her stuff. The stark contrast of when she wanted to be dressed up and fancy versus the days she was out in the horse stall scooping the poo and not caring one bit how she looked. How she used to drive like a maniac sometimes while doing makeup, of course, and drinking coffee. Her need to always say, "Colette, this is your mommy," at the beginning of every voicemail, even though I knew who it was on the phone. How she would just decide to get up and do things on the fly and just do them. That includes when you're walking in front of her, she was behind me, taking a hard left in the department store and disappearing for an hour. Her appreciation of nature, especially flowers, which is so lovely to see so many flowers in our sanctuary. Her need to dine on fine china for all of our holidays and special occasions, and our family has so much china, it's unthinkable. And then how she loved to cook, and she could can just about everything, and I think she kind of did. I'm sure we'll all miss her lemon meringue pies. I know they were delicious. Roxy reminded me how she licked her fingers to turn pages so everything is covered in mom spit. Her obsession with Taco Bell fast food. Playing the piano, hitting wrong notes, and just keep on going through the song. And I was reminded being in here, I just wrote this, singing loudly with Grandma Ann in church so everyone knows you mean it. And her signature curse word of Jizo. So those are just a few things that I will miss about my mom, but thank you all for being here to celebrate her.
Okay, I'm not that organized. I told my sister, I'm just gonna get up here and wing it. So bear with me. I wanted to be in charge of thanking the people that we needed to thank. First of all, I want to thank my sister. She's my partner in crime. We always say we are solar opposites, but we're always in each other's orbit. So, and Mom said we have to stay together because we are the opposites of her, and we're a pair, and we go together. So that's the rule. Thank you to our partners in crime, Scott and Christopher, for all your support, for letting us, turn our house upside down a million times, and then Scott for helping us find Mom's final last resort. That worked out perfectly, and we have you to thank for it, so thank you for organizing that. Thank you to all our family, obviously, but especially David and Julie. You guys were there so much for us at the end, and it was so helpful. I think we're just really thankful for all of your support, so thank you. For Dad and Rebecca, thank you for also being our rock. Thank you, Dad, for running around and getting a million pieces of firewood in case we ran out of power. And thank you for Rebecca for being his partner in crime. Thank you, Janet and Sarah and Steve, and helping us move all of Mom's stuff from Weed back down to Sacramento. That was a huge feat, and we are so appreciative for all your hard work and your willingness to help. Thank you, Melissa and family, for finding a spot for us. Where are you? Oh, there you are. For finding a spot for us to be together tomorrow. It is no easy feat to find a place that will house our huge family. But thank you for all your hard work on that. And thank you for all of our cousins and our extended family. We felt your love and support the whole time through this process. We all love you very, very much. Thank you, Patty. I can't think of anyone else who is more perfect than Patty to do this service. She was the best friend of my mom the whole time we were growing up, and I think a huge thanks to you is definitely worthy. I know it's not easy because you guys were so close, but thank you for doing this for us. Thank you for Pat and Pam, or Pammy, as I call you, for providing music, and Darlene. I still remember taking piano lessons from Darlene when I was little. I'm sorry, I didn't remember much. That's okay, maybe I'll do it again. Thank you for the deacons at the church for, helping us organize everything, and the food afterwards at the lovely reception. You'll see, it's always really yummy. And thank you for the larger church community, as Colette said. We always felt like you were a bigger extension of our family, and that is definitely appreciated, because I feel like you gave us our rock, and that was part of what Mom wanted to pass down to us, so thank you so much for you guys. I think I wanted to talk about honoring Mom's legacy, and I think the best way to do that is to copy her. Find joy in everything you do, and find joy in the things that you have to do, right? Because that's the best way to do it. My sister came up with the fun phrase towards the end of my mother's life: if not now, when? Just do it, have fun. Go on the vacation to Hawaii, go get ice cream, if not now, when? Live your life with those words in the back of your mind. Spread the joy that you find in the things you have to do and like to do as far and wide as you can, as often as possible. And it will multiply, and it will come back to you. I kind of laugh about this. My mom, right before she passed away, she said, "Oh, I know the meaning of life." And I'm like, "Oh, well, do you want to share?" And she said, "Sure. It's just what matters most in life is relationships and love and friendship. That's all." I'm like, "Okay, great." So keep that in mind. I'm sure God whispered in her ear and told her that secret, and she was nice enough to share it. And she lived it every day. So I hope you all do the same, and I hope that you feel like I do. My mother did not die. She surrounds me all the time. I dream about her all the time. She's having fun with my dog, doing naughty things with him and playing and being a good grandma, dog grandma. There we go. And she's in us, and she's in our family. So do her the honor of carrying on her legacy with your joy. Thank you.
I don't think you guys need me. Thank you very much. Let's stand and sing another hymn that Shelley liked. And there are hymnals underneath the chairs there. And it is How Great Thou Art, hymn 625. Thank you. We sang all 4 verses. Why not? Shelley believed all that. Thank you, David and Julie and Roxanne and Colette. Let's pray. Gracious God, as we continue to honor Shelley with our memories, comfort us as we reflect upon her love for you and your love for each of us. Amen. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel, not under the bushel basket. This proverb comes on the heels of Jesus teaching the Beatitudes. According to the gospel writer Matthew, and interpreted, if you've seen any of the movies about Jesus, you see him being surrounded by crowds and then going up onto a hillside so he can see everybody and they can see him and they can hear him. He preached what it means to follow God. They were following Jesus. They wanted to know what Jesus had to say. What does God say? Surprising these first century seekers, Jesus did not burden them with ancient laws. You better do this and you better do that, and you don't do this and you don't do that. Rather, he taught that they were blessed. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. And attached to these Beatitudes, these new blessings, that's what Beatitude means, a new blessing, was equally radically partnered with how to live them. A blessing is not to be hoarded or hidden. It is to be shared and to shine forth. In still other words, Jesus added, like salt, because the parable about if a salt loses its saltiness, it's useless. It has no essence. And if you light a candle and hide it under a bushel, what good is it? What is it good to be covered? When I was reflecting about Shelley, these Matthew verses jumped out at me. I even said aloud, "This is Shelley." For any of you who went to Sunday school or vacation Bible school, you know the song, "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." And we even had hand signals for all the verses, and I bet Colette and Roxanne and their cousins could still reenact, "Don't hide it under a bushel, no. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine." That's your mom. Jesus taught that blessed is the follower because they too can know God. Like Jesus, if they believe and practice these truths of mercy, seeking goodness and kindness, they will be generating blessings, blessings in their lives and the lives of others and the lives of this world. It is relationship. Your mother was right. No, she told you. Who was there when, the secret of life. That's the meaning of life. It is in relationships. Jesus said it back in the Beatitudes. It's actually the first thing God did. God wanted a relationship with us. The good news is that you are a child of God. So act like it. Be salty. Be light. Share this good news, for it is for everyone. And the Beatitudes are still relevant. The bottom line, where we say the rubber meets the road, is making Jesus' teachings a real day-to-day part of our life. We show compassion. We are helpful, even if we're only paid 5 cents to make a bed. But we belong to God. And that was a radical teaching in those times, and a lot of people still believe it today. If you're poor, or if you're diseased, or if you're disabled, or you are on the street, it's God's curse, and you're not worthy of God's attention or care. It was especially true then. And the Gospels are full of outcasts who Jesus sought and encountered and received and blessed. This was the life he lived, and we are to embrace it. Be an advocate for such as these. God looks beyond our situation and sees the person, a child of God, something God alone can see. During Lent, in the church calendar, which we are now in, we sing a hymn called "In the Bulb There Is a Flower." It goes on that in the seed there is an apple tree, and cocoons, a hidden promise, butterflies will soon be free, unrevealed until its season, something God alone can see. To me, this was Jesus' message of how God sees us through how we are to see others. Shelley took these words and Jesus' teachings to heart, something she learned from her parents and great-great-grandparents, from the church she grew up in and continued to follow. She wanted this for her girls. I met Shelley when she first moved back to Red Bluff as a newly single mom of a preschool age Roxanne and a school age Colette. I had only been the associate pastor at this church for maybe a little over a year or so, and I too had moved to Red Bluff to take this job, or that job, I'm not here anymore, as a divorced mom with a toddler close to Roxanne's age. So Shelley and I had a lot in common. And then Shelley was hired as the church secretary. It was a time in the Red Bluff church here that they were searching for a full-time head pastor. It was a time of transition, and there were other temporary pastors filling in. Anyway, there were many a time when it was just Shelley and me and Dorothy Reed, thank you, Dorothy, overseeing the day-to-day workings of a very busy, a very full, and a very compassionate church. I think we were pretty fabulous together. I think we were a good team. And we continued to work together well when the new pastor, Tim Soul, was hired. One of the first things I learned about Shelley was her quick wit, her skills, her sharp mind, plus a good sense of humor, an easy laugh, and that she would speak her mind. She believed in the work of the church and understood we all have a role to play. And you heard of the many, many roles that Shelley had. I even forgot about Mary Kay. I totally forgot Mary Kay. Her energy, still evident when she became ill, always amazed me, always amazed me. Shelley had that ability to assess a situation and then ask, where am I supposed to help? One day she asked that question when we encountered a woman who walked into the church asking for money for food and diapers for her children. What Shelley soon learned on this conversation was that this woman was being physically abused by her boyfriend. In fact, he was sitting out in the car, sending her in, thinking that we would give money to her more than him. So moving down the road quite a few miles, this encounter led Shelley to get involved with the women's shelter in Reading, and then to start and be a part of the crisis hotline here, and then to be on a committee, a countywide committee, to help find resources here and a women's shelter. I know this brief accounting barely scratches the surface of what she did, but being an advocate to others seemed to come easily for Shelley. She embraced change and challenged by getting informed, and then moved to a don't just sit there, do something stance. I think you put it very well. Now, I don't think that's just being Miss Bossy Pants, and it's certainly not being power hungry. Plain and simple, it's being salty and letting your light shine. Why huddle under a safe basket or in your easy chair at home, or for those of us who go to church, sitting comfortably in your seat? Why do that when you have been graced by the very Spirit and gifts of God? Shelley's deep belief, established and nurtured since childhood, shaped her sense of justice and compassion that led her to understanding what being a child of God really was. You don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk. You walk the walk of Jesus. His teachings in the Gospels were not pious ideals to her, but real values to practice daily. And so hand in hand with blessed are the poor, the mourners, the meek, the persecuted, is the direct response. For they will be fed, they will be comforted, they will be advocated for, and they will be defended by those salty and light-giving people of God. To me, Shelley got it. She was not perfect, just ask those who loved her. She never claimed to be perfect or patient, but I know I would want her in my corner. And she certainly was when her daughters needed any kind of help. She educated herself. She found the best specialists, who were, of course, not in a small Northern California community, and she traveled to where she could find help. In and through all what Shelley did and who she understood herself to be resonated from her soul of being a child of God, and that you are too. She brought that to her vibrant love of life, her family, her career, her place in the world. To me, Shelley died too soon. But her first words to me when she told me her diagnosis was that it was her time. This did not negate her love for Colette or Roxanne or her family, and it certainly did not negate her love for life. As she explained to me, I simply trust that I belong to God, and dying does not change that for me. I am not afraid of death. Frog, fully reliant on God. To be frank with you, my reaction was that I felt like it was too soon, and I was not ready for her to die. Shelley made the most of her days on earth. To her, it was not the number of days she was gifted, but how she made use of those days. Missing her, even questioning God's timing, is a very real and a very normal feeling. And as I say that, I guess Shelley might say that her being gone from our sight does not dim the light she brought into our worlds. In fact, she would probably look us square in the eye and quote, "You are the light of the world. Let your light shine before others so they may see your good works and give God the glory." We do give deep thanks for Rochelle Ann, our Shelley, as daughter and sister, auntie and mother, friend. May she rest from her good works and continue to shine in our hearts. Blessed are we to have known and to have been known by her, to love and to have been loved by her. Please pray with me. God, light of the world, before whom generations rise and pass away, we remember and thank you for all your servants who, having lived this life in faith, now live eternally with you. Especially, we thank you for your servant Shelley, whose baptism is now complete. We praise you for the gift of her life, for all in her that was good and kind and generous, for the grace you gave her that inspired the love of others and enabled her to serve you faithfully. We thank you that for her death is past and pain ended, and that she has now entered the light you have prepared through Jesus Christ our Lord, who taught us to pray, saying, "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen."
the far side of the sky. The first thing that I'm gonna do is spread my wings and fly. Gonna land beside a lion and run my fingers through his mane. Or I might find out what it's like to ride a drop of rain. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, there'll be only happy tears. And I'll shed the sins and struggles I have carried all these years. And I'll leave my heart wide open. I will love and have no fear. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, don't cry for me down here. Gonna walk with my granddaddy, and he'll match me step for step. I'll tell him how I miss him every minute since he left. Then I'll hug his neck, yeah, when I get where I'm going. They're the only happy tears. I will share the sins and struggles I have carried through these years, and I'll leave my heart wide open. I will love and have no fear. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, don't cry for me down here. So much pain and so much darkness in this world we stumble through. All the questions I have answered and so much work to do. But when I get where I'm going, I see my Maker's face. I'll stand forever in the light of his amazing grace. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, there'll be no more happy tears.
of mine in C.
I gave her.
That one's in E flat.
Is that bad?
No, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.